YouTube and welcome to another GV anime review. Today I am reviewing an anime that I actually already watched 3 months ago, so excuse me if my memory isn't that clear anymore. But that anime is Bokura ga Ita, or We Were There. So I watched Bokura ga Ita already somewhere in May, but then the reviews for Sword Art Online came, and the spring reviews came, and the requested review for Death Parade came, so it got delayed and delayed and delayed. But today it is finally here. Also, you might have noticed from the title of this video that this is going to be a bit of a special review, since after I'm done reviewing the anime, I'm also giving you my thoughts about the manga of Bokura ga Ita. Now, why I break my rule of being an anime-only reviewer will come at the end of the review. So Bokura ga Ita follows a high school girl by the name of Nanami Takahashi. In her class there's a boy named Yano Motoharu, and he's the most popular kid of the school. Everyone looks up to him and girls fall for him like leaves fall from the trees in fall. So when also Takahashi falls for Yano, he seems unreachable. But that is until Yano actually returns Takahashi's feelings and they become a couple. And from there on, we follow the couple through all the struggles that they encounter, since Yano isn't the easiest person to live with, and also his past throws a shadow onto the young couple. So the first thing that I liked about this anime was the fact that we get multiple love characters. I always find it to be a positive thing when romance animes don't just give us the main couple. Now, a lot of romance animes do implement some kind of a rival and like that create a love triangle. But in Bokura ga Ita we get 4 love characters and they're all intertwined with each other and there's interaction between all 4 of them. And that made that the romance could ascend to a higher level than the romance in your day-to-day romance anime. Next thing that I liked was the large time span that this anime covers. See, 90% of the romance animes takes place in 1 year. Usually the anime starts at the opening ceremony and it finishes at graduation or the closing ceremony. But Bokura ga Ita went further than that, and the anime covers 2 years in the lives of our characters instead of 1. And doing that gives a whole lot of potential to your anime and to your characters. The characters have way more time to grow, to mature and to develop. And combined with that comes another element that I really like in anime, and that's coming of age. If there's coming of age in your anime, then the chance is big that I will like it. I just like to see the characters make that transition from childness to adulthood and all the troubles that they have to overcome in that process. That's also a reason why romance dramas are my favorite genre, since those animes usually have coming of age. And Bokura ga Ita definitely contains coming of age for both main characters in the 2 years that the anime span. And note that the manga of Bokura ga Ita has a time span of 10 years. The characters are next on my positive list, and more specifically how the anime twisted my opinions about the characters a few times. See, at the start of the anime, I hated Yano. He was a manipulative asshole. He would always get what he wants and everything went his way. Even if Takahashi didn't agree with it, then Yano knew exactly what buttons to press to make Takahashi give in. He literally manipulated her and he just didn't deserve her. And yes, Yano had a sad past, but Takahashi was way too good for him, and for the largest part of the anime, I was rooting for Takeuchi, Yano's friend. But then, already quite far in the anime, in episode 21, something happened that changed my entire outlook on the characters. Of course, I can't go into details because of spoilers, but that event made me make a complete 180 about the characters. Because at that time, I found Takahashi to be an egoistic bitch. I mean, how could she expect that Yano was going to be with her when that happened, no matter what the history was? And Takeuchi, he had been playing the game fair with Yano up until that point. But there he took advantage of a situation that he shouldn't have taken advantage of. So there I thought that Yano was completely in the right. But as it usually goes in romance animes, at the end they made everything right and I couldn't really hate any of them anymore. And my last positive point is that Bokura Gaita is one of those few romance animes that dares to incorporate the topic of sex into its story. I also talked about this in my review of Saikano. There aren't a lot of anime that use the topic of sex without being very comical about it or taking the edgy tour. But Bokura Gaita did implement that topic, so that was quite unique and I must applaud the anime for it. But that leads me straight into my negative section. Although I applaud Bokura Gaita for using the topic of sex, the execution made me almost question why I was watching this anime. Episodes 7 to 9, when the topic is used, were so cringe-worthy that I feared for the rest of the anime. It hadn't been that long before that I saw Saikano, an anime that brought the topic of sex to such a mature level. And then Bokura Gaita tore me right back down to reality. And I can combine this negative point with my next, which was the comedy. Now here I must apologize since I don't really remember that much about the comedy in Bokura Gaita, but my bullet list that I make after each episode said comedy in the negative, and I do remember that I really didn't like the comedy throughout the entire anime, but especially in these 3 episodes. Next negative point is the animation. Whenever I watch an older anime, I can't help but compare it to animes from that year. And if you say to me animes from 2006, I immediately think of Hellsing Ultimate and Clannad. And Bokura Gaita didn't came close to those two in terms of animation. Also, the studio Artland, I had never heard of them, and the only real known franchise from them is Musishi. And there was one thing in particular that annoyed me throughout the entire anime, and that was how the studio would only draw one eye when they showed faces. I know that that's something that's common in manga, but it just looked so weird in this anime. And my final negative point is the open ending of Bokura Gaita. As I mentioned in my top 10 anime that need another season from last week, Bokura Gaita has an open ending, and that's also the reason why I read the manga as well. See, with most open endings I can live with, even with those that were high on my top 10 list. But every now and then an anime comes along that gives me an open ending that I can't cope with. The only other anime that did that till today was The World God Only Knows, and there I read the final chapters to see how everything concluded. And here in Bokura Gaita it was the same thing. It felt like the real story, the real test of Yano's and Takahashi's relationship was just starting, so I had to read the manga of Bokura Gaita, but more about that after the conclusion. So as a conclusion, Bokura Gaita is a very mature romance anime. Don't expect any lovey-dovey romance, but expect a good coming of age anime with characters that learn how to deal with struggles and learn how difficult life can be. Except for those few cringy episodes, Bokura Gaita was one of those romance dramas that I really like. And that's why I'm going to rate Bokura Gaita at 3.5 out of 5 stars. If the anime would have been concluded, that might have been a 4, but the anime on its own deserves a 3.5. So if you enjoyed the mature romance that Bokura Gaita brought, there are some other romance animes that you might enjoy. Two animes that I recommend are Honey and Clover and this season's Orange, which I am both watching right now. Both have a very mature approach towards romance, and so has also Kokoro Connect. So that's a third recommendation that I make if you really like the coming of age theme in romance animes. But then, as I said, I'm also going to give you my thoughts on the manga of Bokura Gaita. As I mentioned, the open ending of the anime really annoyed me, and I just had to read the rest of the manga, which are the final 39 chapters. And after reading them, I am so disappointed that the rest of this manga was never animated. Because, whoa, the romance drama was already great in the anime, but here in the manga, which starts by the way with a 5-year time skip, the intriguing and the dramatic development was amazing. This would have been an amazing romance drama anime. The relationships in this manga felt so real, and the manga doesn't try to bloom anything. The relationships are not fun in this manga. We see more grief and trouble than we see actual romance. And the characters were so relatable too. I could especially relate a lot to Takeuchi. I won't say that I've experienced the same thing as he, but I can understand how he felt. So I'm kind of sad that it never got animated, but I highly recommend reading the final 39 chapters of the manga after you finish the anime adaptation. And with that, I conclude my review of Bokura Gaita. As usual, you'll find a full list of all my animes and reviews over at Anime&Manga. As usual, I will put a link in the description box down below. Now, if you want me to review a particular anime from this list, please leave it in the comments. Also, if you have a recommendation for me, put it in the comments as well. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, visit me on Facebook and subscribe to this channel for more reviews in the future. I will say arigatou gozaimasu, and I will see you all in the next video.